So where were you born, Glenn?
I was born here in Hodgenville, actually. I was born behind the Lincoln statue at the Hodgenville Clinic a few years back and lived here till I was 3. My dad was a Baptist minister, and we left here when I was 3. He was minister at Mount Tabor Baptist Church. And then we moved to Hart County in the Linwood area. And from there to Fairview, Kentucky, Jefferson Davis Monument. It's the home of the Miniature Washington Monument. We were in the shadow of that. And from there we moved to a little community called Ringo, Tennessee, which was outside of the Fort Campbell area. And from there we moved to Clarksville, Tennessee. Dad was an associational missionary there for a year. So I went to 3rd through 8th grade there in Tennessee. And the 9th grade I went to Greenwood Junior High School. And Dad was called back to be a minister down at the church here in Buffalo Baptist. So I moved back in the summer of when I was 15 years old, my sophomore year. And from there on, I graduated from LaRue County, went to Western Kentucky University, got my undergraduate degree, and married my high school sweetheart. We both went to Western, and she is she's retired. She was a librarian at Fort Knox High School for 31 years. I went on to get my next degree in guidance, and enjoyed that for 1 year during a transition period. I actually taught physical education for 11 years. Loved it. We had gymnastics teams, cross-country teams, basketball leagues among the teaching part, but a lot of that was after-school activities, and we really enjoyed that. Once I got my counseling degree, my master's, I was hired to be the guidance counselor at the middle school for 1 year. I didn't know it was going to be 1 year, but I was also asked to be the basketball coach. I played high school basketball here at LaRue County and college basketball. And that was kind of a special year because I really got to know the kids. I loved the counseling part of it. And our basketball teams, our 7th and 8th grade teams, went 35-1 that year. Mr. Jerry Price was actually one of my teachers when I was principal up at Buffalo. And we coached together, and it was one of those phenomenal years where everything just clicked. At the end of that year, Mr. Sanders, who was then the superintendent, called me in, and of course, the superintendent's pretty much hired then, or Mr. Sanders did. He said, I'd like for you to be one of our principals in the county. Would you be interested? And of course, I got my rank 1 and extra credit in supervision, superintendency, principalship, DPP, curriculum supervisor. But I always loved a challenge. I'm a very driven person, if that's what you want to call it. But when he asked me, I did ask him. I said I would like to think about it, and I won't tell you what he said because it was strong. He said, "You got to think about it," but we'll leave it at that. But I said, "Yes, can I get back with you within 24 hours?" And so I decided that yes, I wanted the challenge. So I was actually a teacher at Buffalo and Magnolia for my first 11 years in PE, and then coached high school basketball and baseball. And when he asked me to come back to Buffalo, it was kind of bittersweet because the folks that I had taught with, now I was going to be their supervisor, if that's what you wanted to call it. And it was kind of, it's kind of tough, or it was for me, because I wanted them to respect me, but at the same time, I wanted them to know that I was right in there with them the whole time. So that's how I got started. I was a principal at Buffalo Elementary for 15 years, and I retired in 2001 after a very enjoyable educational career. Loved every minute of it, loved the kids, loved the teachers that I had the opportunity to work with, the parents. I feel very blessed that I had that opportunity.
What inspired you to go into education?
Well, that's a tough question because I was very interested in sports. I had an opportunity for a college scholarship at Camelsville. At that time, it was Camelsville College. But my future wife was going to Western, and it probably deterred me a little bit. So I went ahead and pursued college at Western Kentucky University. I also enjoyed art, and I also enjoyed music. I sang all my life, and they were auditioning, but they only needed a very high tenor. That was the only spot they had. And I have a pretty good range, but I mean, all the time. So I thought, well, maybe it's for me because I love sports, played all kinds of sports growing up. Maybe it's for me to do that. Well, I fell in love with it. And I know a lot of times when you say physical education teacher, people they say, oh, you throw out a ball. Well, that is a very much of a misconception for the most part. Now, I will say physical education has gotten a bad name because there are some out there that's what they did, and that always bothered me. So I tried to do the best I could to create a strong physical education program at the elementary level, and had the opportunity to teach at Buffalo and Magnolia for 11 years. I enjoyed working with young people. I think that's probably what stimulated me more than anything. I remember when I was in college, we had an Olympics. I organized an Olympics for all the kids that I picked up in my station wagon, and we would play ball every day. We would take them somewhere and pick them up and take them home. And we made all of our trophies and everything out of just pieces of wood. I put them together, sanded them down, and they thought they were on cloud nine when they won something. We had the 50-yard dash and the 100-yard dash and the marathon and the broad jump, and had medals. We made the medals, and I enjoyed that kind of stuff. It was a challenge for me. So I really feel like at that time that the career path that I chose was the right one for me. I still enjoyed drawing, and I still loved music, and I love all genres of music, really. So that's how I got into the educational field, as far as feeling like this is what I'm supposed to do. You're not going to get rich as a teacher, but there's a lot, when you think about it, there's so much more to it in teaching, because you actually see kids in a lot of areas, whether it be in the classroom, on the ball court. You see them progress, and you see the improvements they make and the strides they make, the frustrations they have. But when it all comes together and you see them being successful, I think overall that's where I've done the right thing. I enjoyed the kids and the challenges that came with it. And the teachers and faculty, wherever I was, they put the kids first. That was the motto that I guess I came up with when I became principal, was where children come first. And I think we have to do that. We're in the wrong field as educators if we don't put the kids first.
What kind of changes have you seen over your administrative years?
Oh boy. Well, the big one would be the CARA Act, which was in I believe 1990 when this all kicked in. We had so many experimental things, and our schools, I have to say, we served as pilot programs for many new programs throughout the state. LaRue County was noted for that because I think they felt that the quality of education was strong, and they felt that the teachers were of quality, and if anyone could make it successfully work, whatever the challenge was, they could do it. And we did. One thing that comes to mind was the combined grades. At one time, we would have as many as well, for example, instead of having a first grade, second grade, third grade teachers, you would have one teacher that was teaching first, second, and third, and it wasn't called grades, it was called a K through 3 classroom. And you actually had what we think of in the old days, if that's what you want to call it, there were first, second, and third graders housed in the same classroom all day, every day. That was a new transition for Cara. They wanted that to work. And their philosophy was, for the most part, these third graders can help these first graders. They can be coaches. They can be tutors. But many times these third graders, they were not ready for that. They didn't know how to do that. And I'm not saying it didn't work, because our teachers, if it could work, our teachers made it work. And they were phenomenal, because I would go in and have to observe. And to see what those teachers could do in that situation, it was unbelievable. And they did have some of those older kids that became very, very good mentors and did an excellent job. Of course, the site-based council became a reality. For example, if you have a hiring of a teacher and you interviewed, the site-based council would meet for the interview. Now, the principal had the ultimate say. It was a hope that, based on what the whole committee came up with, that they would go with what the committee went with. That's something that we had to work through as a site-based council. I think there were good points to it. I think there were some things that they should have left up to the administrator. Is when you hire a teacher, that teacher needs to be allowed to teach. Let the teacher teach. The testing will take care of itself if you let the teachers do their job. It seems nowadays that a lot of times the teachers are almost forced to teach to the test, and it puts them in a very vicarious position when, if you would let them teach, they know what the curriculum is. They know what's expected of them. But so many times we get caught up in all this paperwork and mandates and lesson plans, and I'm not saying lesson plans aren't good, but sometimes you go off the record with kids because that's what they need that day. You know, it's not a matter of, okay, I've covered this, and this. I've checked it off. I'm done. That's not the way it works in a classroom. And folks that haven't been in a classroom, they don't understand that.
So, what are some of the stories that you've had throughout your educational career?
Oh my. Some I can share with you, some I can't, because you absolutely wouldn't believe some of them. One that comes to mind was I heard the kids hollering out on the playground one day, and they were screaming. The teacher was out there. Of course, they wasn't going to go close to it, but there was a very large snake that was around the tree where these kids were playing, and some way they saw it, and it terrorized them. And I came out, and they don't really bother me, but anyway, I stepped on the head to stop it, and then I got him. He was probably 5 foot, about that big around, and they said, "Mr. Rice, you're not going to pick him up." I said, "Well, we're not going to hurt him." And then I had some to say, "You're not going to hurt him, are you?" I said, "No," but they wanted him gone, and so I picked it up, and he wrapped all the way around my arm, just all the way down, but I still had him, and I said, "See, I'm not going to hurt him." And of course, some of them were saying, "Get him, kill him," and others were saying, "No, don't kill him." But took him down behind the school and let him go. But many of them, they couldn't believe that. Can't believe you picked that snake up. And of course, you had some of the kids that they probably played with them at home. It didn't bother them at all. But you had some that it's like, can't believe you did that. Oh, there's other stories. Had a lot of playground stories. We had the opportunity. We had a very active PTO organization, and we did fundraisers throughout the year in order to buy supplies and furnish different things for the teachers in the classroom. And that was one of the things that we gave teachers X amount of money to furnish their classroom based on some of our fundraisers and so forth. And we actually purchased and built our playground with that. And it was state of the art at that time. If it's what you is the new Trex type of materials, and it lasts and lasts. And kids had just endless hours of fun up there with that. They would come back up in the afternoon sometime after school. In the summer, they would come up. But the PTO organization, I have to say, was phenomenal. The people that volunteered. We had spring festivals. We had fall festivals. We had chili suppers, fundraisers, and all that went directly some way or another to the kids or to the teachers to help the kids. That was a lot of fun. We had talent shows. We had music programs. One of the ladies that was, in fact, she retired the same year I did, Diane Gardner. Tremendous musicals that they would put on, in-depth, detailed costumes. They really, or she really, along with the volunteers, they didn't cut any corners. Those kids were on cloud nine when they did their musicals. Teachers put everything they had into it. If folks think that teaching is an 8 to 3 job, they need to follow them. These teachers, and I'm assuming they probably still do the same thing, they're up there at 5, 6, 7 o'clock at night getting lesson plans ready, getting things ready for the next day. They get up there at 6:30 and 7 in the mornings, and they have everything prepared when those kids come in. So if people think that teaching is, you get off during the summer, well, I will tell you that most teachers, or a lot of teachers, they will get summer jobs in order to compensate. And back then, they changed that. They gradually went to a 12-month check each month. But for many years, the check stopped in May, and they didn't pick back up until the end of August. So there was no funds coming in. So many teachers would get second jobs in order to cover for those months that they were out of school. And I think a lot of people think, well, they're on vacation. No, they're still trying to make ends meet with their family, and they would have to take second, sometimes third jobs during the summer in order to make it. So as I mentioned before, if you are into teaching, and I'm not going to say it's not a good job, because it is, but you're not going to get rich from teaching. You can live a comfortable life, but you're paying. In fact, it blows me away. I've got 3 daughters, and all 3 of them are still paying on their schooling. And I have one daughter that's close to 40. I have a daughter that's 30, going to be 36 in just a few days, and a daughter that will be 30 in a few days. And they are still paying their student loans to this day. So once you get your education, it's, for the most part, now some people are lucky and they've gotten full scholarships, or their parents were able to take care of their college. But most of your teachers, you'll find, for years, they are paying on their schooling, but it's what they wanted to do. It's what they felt called to do. So teaching it's a wonderful profession. It's a challenging profession, but it's not a rich profession, if that's what you want to call it. As far as professionals go, you think of, and everybody handles it different. You think of dentists, and you think of doctors and lawyers and so forth. Teaching is a professional job too, And you don't do it in 4 years. You go a 5th year and a 6th year and a 7th year, because it's mandatory, unless it's changed, that you have to have your master's within 5 years. I don't know if that's changed or not. But and then if you're wanting to pursue some type of administrative or supervisory job down the road, then there's more training for your rank 1 and your specialty area. So it's a lifelong commitment when you're a teacher, and you can make of it what you want to.
So, how did you decide to retire?
That is a very good question. I retired as far as from administration after 27 years of education, the last 15 as principal. And if you would have told me the year that I retired that I was going to, I would have told you no, have no intention of retiring. But during Christmas of that year, and I can't explain it, something told me, and I don't mean this necessarily the way it sounds, but I felt like that at that time our student scores and what the students were getting and the quality of teaching, I felt like that we were at an all-time high, if that's what you want to call it. Things were clicking, and you really felt like things were in good shape. And then I got to thinking, well, I hope that's true. If they are, it would be an easy transition for the next person, hopefully, to come in and just take up where we've left off. And during that Christmas, I got to thinking, and finally decided that and I was 49, young really for an administrator at that time, but I felt like that there was also still some other things that I wanted to do. I think I mentioned earlier I've sang all my life, but with this retiring, it was hard. It was very hard for me to make that decision. And in fact, when school got ready to start that next year, I went to a good friend of mine's and his wife's. They used to live here, and I went all the way to Pensacola, Florida. And that first week of school, I was down there and didn't want to see the buses run or anything. So just got away from it for a while, and finally I realized, you've done this. You have really taken the step here. And some people probably thought I was crazy because, hey, you're in a principal's job, you're in an administrative job, you're 49 years old. Why are you doing this? You're crazy. But I knew that there were other things that I still wanted to do. So when people said, well, you've retired, I said, no, I really didn't retire. I've just kind of changed gears in careers. And with the singing and the work, I went into a lot of venues there for about the first 6 years, I guess, after I retired. I was probably on the road and doing probably 75 events a year where I would do concerts. And it would be in churches, it would be secular, gospel. It was a little bit of everything. Gradually, I wanted to do something that was a little bit different. So in 2004, I think it was, I did a first organized concert over at Plum Alley, what is now the State Theater. It was in the back part. And we had right at a sellout crowd. It would seat 200, and they were packed in there shoulder to shoulder. And once that was over, I had a little 5-question survey, and they checked it off to, is this something you would like to see going on in your community or the regional area? And it was a resounding yes. So I told myself I'm going to take on the challenge, and I made the leap to the Performing Arts Center, which was from 200 up to an 800 seat capacity. And if you haven't been there, it's one of the. It reminds me of a smaller version of the Kentucky Center for the Arts in Louisville. It's a very nice facility, and so we started with that. And this is now, to make a long story short, we are fixing to kick off our 13th season.
So, what's the greatest reward being a teacher?
Seeing kids be successful, and knowing that they gave their best effort. And how do I put this? Some kids' efforts are going to be different than other children's efforts. Some children are limited somewhat with their abilities. It's not that they can't learn. It just might be that they don't learn as easy as some other kids. But seeing all kids in their own way being successful, whether it be in a subject area, math, history, science, whether it be an active area such as physical education that I had the opportunity to be into, but also not just the subject areas, but lifelong skills. What's happening to them that's going to take them into a job? What's happening to them that's going to make them be responsible for their behavior? What's going to happen to them that's going to make them a very determined person, knowing that, I call it driven sometimes, but knowing what they want and pursuing it and being good at what they do, whatever they do. You know, everybody is not cut out for college. It's not. But it's not to say they can't be successful in what they do. And I've seen many students that haven't gone to college, and if you're looking at income-wise, they have blown the top out of it. But everybody handles their future in different ways. It's our hope, I think, as teachers across the board, that whatever we can do to enhance that possibility of success for students, that's what we want to do. And to see that happen with students, that's the reward.